Hi, students. I will be making a video here to demonstrate how to graph the different types of single subject designs that you might be needing to create graphs for. So the first one that I will model is the reversal design. Some things in terms of how I organize the spreadsheet for the graph representation is similar across the different type of designs, but I'll walk you through and hopefully by the end of this, you will feel pretty good with how to create each of the different types of graphs. So I'm going to start with a reversal design. How you graph, there's really no right or wrong way to generate the graph. It kind of just depends on like what you've been taught before or how you know to use Excel. So what I'm going to be showing you now is how I know to use Excel. Just be aware that if you look up other tutorial videos or you get other types of instructions, there's really no right or wrong. It's just how you come to make the graph with however you know how to do it. So what I like to do is separate out each section based on each participant and use each cell column as the condition label. So I'll show you what I mean. So basically, I always reserve this first cell as the session. If you're using actual data, you would maybe have like the date of the session here, and that helps you sort of stay organized if you're, running a study where you're taking participant data, so you can have the date of the sessions there. You might also just number it like session one, session two, and so on. And that just helps keep you organized as to when that session occurred or what session number that is. So now it's auto making it a date. But anyway, then here I would have my baseline condition. So remember, I'm crafting an ABAB reversal design right now. After the baseline, I would obviously go back to treatment, just as per that design, then back to baseline, then back to treatment. So this organizes my different conditions. Now I need to also organize each participant. So I would have this be participant one. Then I would move down here and create participant two. I'll show you that in a second. But anyway, so if I were to organize my sessions here, this would be session two, this is session one. I don't know why it keeps doing that. Sometimes Excel starts doing things that you don't want it to. Anyway, 3, 4, 5, etc. A trick also is if you go like this and pull it down, it'll auto number for you. Wonder if it'll do it backwards. Oh yeah, great. So now what's going to start to happen is you'll graph your data per each session. So for example, let's say that for session 1, 2, and 3, the baseline data was 0. So it looked like this. And now after your 3 baseline sessions, you start treatment. So your treatment data is going to start here. So let's say upon treatment, your data was, I don't know, 40, 50, and then you went back to baseline. So now you're going to shift over into baseline for session 7, and maybe your data dropped back down, just making these data up, obviously. Then back to treatment. And let's say that was the end of that participant. So now I'm just going to delete these. To graph these data, what you're going to do is just graph the actual data points. So all of this information here is just to keep you organized as the researcher or the one who's making the graphs. The only thing that you need to grab though to generate the graph is the data itself. So here I have the data highlighted. Now I'm going to go to Insert. I'm going to go to Charts. Oops, make sure that's highlighted. It's actually this little icon here. So it's called line or area chart. And then I'm going to choose align with markers. And it's going to generate something like this. So now what you have to do is actually format this graph. Now, if I had another participant, what I would do is label here, participant 2, session, label out each session. And then I would keep these all the same so that it kind of just is uniform across your participants. For an ABAB design, each participant gets their own graph, so I wouldn't stack them or anything. I would just grab the data, make a second graph, and have each participant's graph next to them so I can see that clearly. So now to APA format it, what I do is I delete this chart title. And I'll show you why I like to do that. I think it'll make sense eventually, but for now, I'll just show you how I remove that. I also want to remove these grid lines. So to remove those grid lines, what I do is I click on the graph. So you know your graph is highlighted when it has a big box around it, and it'll also grab the data that are represented in that graph. Now to remove the grid lines, I need to hover my mouse just right over the grid lines like so, and I'll hit the delete or backspace button on my keyboard, and now those are gone. I'm also going to delete these series titles because we don't use these in APA format graphs. We actually label each data path if we have different data points. Like if you had a triangle versus a square, you would indicate that. But in this case, we don't need to indicate what the different data are because our condition labels will do that. So now I need to add some formatting here to each of my axes. So I'm going to highlight this y-axis. And I know it's highlighted because there's a square, or I guess a rectangle around it like so. I'm going to right click. Oops, see in there, it let go of it. So that'll happen sometimes. And I realized that it let go of it because it highlighted all the data, which tells me that it's just giving me the right click for the whole graph. And I want a right click for the actual axis. So I'll try again. There we go. So now I'm going to go to Format Access here. I'm going to do a few things. So first, you want to add some tick marks. So for tick marks, you want them to be outside, like so, major type tick marks. I'm also going to make this line here darker. So if I come over to this paint can, I select line, there's a solid line, and I want it to be black. I'm going to do the same thing here to my x-axis. So the formatting is already open since it was open for the last axis. Going to make this black as well and add some tick marks. So for the tick marks, you come over here to this bar chart icon. Also be aware, it's possible that your Excel might look a little bit different if you have like an older version or something like that, but generally it's pretty similar across different versions. So you should be able to find what you're looking for by following this general process. Anyway, for the x-axis, you add minor type outside tick marks like so. And now I need to make this font black as well. So I'm going to come over here to home. I'm going to grab this. I'm going to darken the color of the numbers, and I'm going to make them size 12. Previous APA style manuals required Times New Roman font, but the newer version doesn't. So you can use that font, that's fine. Ideally, you want to float your 0 in an APA graph, but for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm just going to leave that like that. Floating your 0 basically means that this doesn't have a number and it starts a little bit above instead of being right at the access line. You can basically do that by making this run to -1 and then putting like a white text over the -1 so that it starts at 0, but we won't worry about that for now. So now what I'm going to do is format data points. So I'm going to grab the data points. I know that the correct data points are grabbed because it's highlighting the ones that are selected. I'm going to come over here to the paint can. I'm going to select the marker type, and I'm going to actually make the marker a little larger because per APA, it should be size 7 or 8. So I made it size 7. And then I also need to fill it in to be APA formatted according to the color. So I'm going to make it black. You could use like grays and stuff like that if you are trying to differentiate across like many data paths. Like let's say you had a lot of different things going on in a graph and it's confusing to see it with all black colors. You could use like open circles, things like that. Anyway, so for the marker here, I'm going to make it to black color. I also need to make it a little bigger. Where's that? Oh, here, marker options. There we go. I'm also going to have to format the lines. I'll show you that in a second, though. Marker needs to be bigger, needs to be black. So it's a little tedious, as you can see. But if you're able to follow along, it's not too complicated. It's a little bigger. Great. Now I need to format each line. So to format the line, I come over here to the line. I do want a solid line, except I want it to be size 1. So I'm going to grab this and make it size 1. And I'm going to make it black. Do the same thing here. Size 1. For some reason, that doesn't look black to me. Yeah, I guess it is. Here, size 1. 1. So there you see all the formatting technique. Now it's formatted, but now I need to add my axes labels, my condition labels, and my phase change lines. So here's what I'm going to do. First thing is I'm going to grab the whole graph. So I know the whole graph is grabbed because it's grabbed that whole data. I'm going to remove this border. So you see how it has an automatic gray border? I'm going to take this out and I'm going to say no line. So now it's going to look like this. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to move it down a little bit. So grab the whole graph here, scoot it down a bit. I'm going to grab the cells behind it like this and paint them white. And this way I kind of just gave myself more room to work with. Now I'm going to insert a text box and I'm going to make the text box the whole length of the axis. I'm going to make sure that it has no line as a border and that it has no fill so that it's transparent. And now this way I can write out my condition labels just using text. So I'm going to make sure that this is size 12 baseline. I just space bar over, and it just kind of makes it easier so you don't have multiple text boxes that you're working with. I'll use this same already formatted text box. So I just copy pasted it. I'm going to bring it down here and I'm going to label this sessions. And to make sure it's centered, I'll just easily use this centering tool. I'm going to copy paste this again, flip it so that it's vertical, move it over here, make it the size of my axis, and title this whatever my dependent variable is. So maybe this is percent correct, or it might be frequency of correct spelling, or whatever it is that your dependent variable is there. So now we have our labels. Last thing I need to add is my condition change lines. So what I'm going to do here is come to Insert, Shapes, grab this line tool, and I'm going to start right where the axis starts and draw a straight line down. Also, if you're wondering, like, I don't know if this line is straight, something you can do is grab the line and then hit your shift bar, and it'll automatically make sure it's straight. For APA format, I want this to be size 1, and I want it to be black. Also, remember that it should be in between the two sessions there. Remember also if you're using dotted versus solid phase change lines. So solid phase change lines indicate a change of condition. So like from baseline to treatment. Dotted phase change lines indicate some change in either an intervention modification or some event that you want to note. So you can use either of those accordingly. Great, so now I have a perfectly formatted graph. If I want to insert this somewhere, I would just take a screen grab of it. So I would screenshot this area and then paste it where I want it. You can just mess with this to make it more centered or whatever you need, but there's your general how you would do that. If you had a second participant, you would put those data here and so on. So now I'll show you what it would look like if I had a multiple baseline design. So if I had a multiple baseline design, I would probably have a few differences. Let me show you what that would look like. So I'll just leave all this here, but I'll show you here what it would look like to do a multiple baseline. So let's say I had a multiple baseline across participants. So I'm going to have multiple participants. The difference here is that I'm not going to go back to baseline. I might have a different condition, like I might have a maintenance condition or a follow-up or something like that. So in this case, your data would be similar in the way that it's represented for these first two columns of baseline and treatment. Then I would move into maintenance and maybe have something like this. And that would end there. For participant 2, remember they have to have more baseline than participant 1. So it would be something like they have 3, 5, 9, 3, 5, 7, just however demonstrates functional control if you're doing hypothetical data, obviously. If you're collecting real data, that just however many sessions you had there. Then moving into treatment, I would graph the treatment data, or I guess note the treatment data here. Then moving into the maintenance condition. After, and you would want a little bit more data here too, because it should be longer than participant 1's. Then I would move on to participant 3 and so on. And now to make this graph, same thing. Oops, if I can cover it. You're going to grab data starting where you want. So I'm starting here. Oh, I don't know why it's doing that. Hold on. Try again. Grab these data, insert. And now it's made this graph here. I'm going to follow the same formatting. So I'm deleting everything here that I don't need. I need to make this black and the right size. I showed you that already, so you know how to do that. I'm just leaving this here just so this isn't a super lengthy video, but you've already seen how to how to format. So here I will grab my second graph. And what I'm going to do for the multiple baselines is I'm going to stack them. So once I have the clean graph without any of this, what you can do, is actually stack it one on top of the other like this. Now, something to be aware of is that in a multiple baseline, you only need to have each panel staggered with one axis. So what you're going to do is this is going to be the condition label for all the graphs. You don't have to include this condition label in each one. You're only going to have it at the top one. So if I remove this, it would look like this. These would be my condition lines. Sometimes it's kind of hard to grab exactly what you want. There we go. Cropped line. Nope. I'm going to use my arrows since it was hard to use my mouse. So what I'm doing is just using my arrow keys to sort of move this where I want it. I'll make it a little longer. There we go. And it's going to come down into the second graph. And I want to remove the color so that I can see the line. And that's why I need to paint the back white. That. Then I'm going to get another line to connect it. It's a little tricky to grab what you want sometimes. There we go. I'll use my arrows again just for ease. And now I'm going to flip it this way to connect them here. So what I'm going to do is make this smaller like this, and then attach it to a longer line like this. And if I had a participant 3, it would continue into the participant 3 graph. You get the idea. So this one, I would use here and then draw my longer line down. Remember to get rid of, we use series titles. We don't need those. This sessions label can be moved also. So I moved the sessions label to the last graph. If I had a third graph, then the sessions label would go under the third graph. I'm going to make this the length of the entire panel, or panels, however many you have, and then have it centered. And then for my condition labels, I'm going to use the same strategy of one text box, and I will label each condition just by using my spacebar to move around the text. And then obviously I would format the axes and the data paths and all that to be correct. There's your multiple baseline. Now we can move into a multi-element. So for a multi-element, also known as a alternating treatments design, there's different versions of an alternating treatments design. So remember, you have a version with a baseline, your standard, two or more independent variables. That's the one I'm going to be showing you, but obviously you can add more conditions as needed. So I'm just going to do the session number, as I like to organize the session number. Then I'm going to have treatment 1, treatment 2. Obviously, if you have treatment 3, you would add another one and so on. So for each session here, this is going to help me see where I'm alternating the treatment. So remember that in alternating treatments, you can't have treatment 1 and 2 occur on the same day. So treatment 1 would happen on session 1, treatment 2 would happen on session 2, treatment 1 on session 3. So I'm alternating when they're occurring. Then you're going to need to connect the data points, because you will see here in a second that Excel doesn't really know what we want when we do it this way, so it won't connect them for us. So let's say that these are my data for my alternating treatments design or multi-element. If I grab it and I go over here to insert and I do align with markers like we've been doing for the last ones, you'll see that it didn't connect the data paths. So we need to go in and actually connect them. So what I'm going to do is just my usual, remove the those little grid lines, remove these titles. Formatting, you know how to format the axes and the data points. But if I want to connect them, what I have to do is go to, let's see. So to connect the data points, what I'm going to do is make sure that my whole graph is highlighted. So when you see these data all highlighted and the graph has this box around it, I'm going to select data. I'm going to go to hidden and empty cells, and I'm going to say connect data points with line. And that will connect the data points. And then from there, I can make the line whatever size I need, in this case, size 1. Same here, size 1. I would need to format my data points, obviously, make them the right size and color, format my axes, add labels. So I would use the same strategies I've showed in the previous. So taking out border, making the background white, and then adding a text box there to manually include my titles. The only thing that's here is in this case, you need to actually indicate the treatments that are being displayed. So what I would do that for that is grab a text box, make sure that it has no fill, no line, similar to the ones we've done before. And then I would label each of the data paths. So like in this case, I'm going to do a treatment 1, and then just going to copy and paste this same text box so I don't have to reformat another one. Make this tree 2. And I'm going to just use the arrows tool with shapes. So come over here and make an arrow to label the different data paths. This should also be black. Once it's all formatted, it will be a correct APA style multi-element alternating treatment. So these 3 graphs, I think, are what you will need. If you need any other graphs, let me know, and hopefully this is helpful.